Okay, let's dive into this because what we're looking at today is a truly fascinating historical mystery. We're going to connect the dots between a radical pharaoh in ancient Egypt, a long-lost kingdom, and some of the oldest religious ideas all the way from India.
So to really get why this was such a huge deal, you've got to picture ancient Egypt. For well over 1,000 years, their entire world, their culture, their economy, it all revolved around this massive collection of gods. The big one, the king of the gods, was Amun, and his priests, they weren't just religious figures. They were a massive political and economic power. So to challenge them wasn't just heresy, it was like trying to challenge reality itself.
And that's the big question, right? This idea of a single universal God. I mean, it didn't just pop out of thin air. It had to come from somewhere. The traditional story points one way, but the source material we're looking at today suggests a much older and, frankly, a far more unexpected influence. So let's unravel this puzzle together.
First up, let's meet our revolutionary. He started his reign as Amenhotep IV, a name that literally means Amun is satisfied. Kind of ironic, because as it turns out, he was anything but satisfied with the old gods.
He completely upended the system with a new religion called Atenism. He even changed his own name to Akhenaten, which means glory of the Aten. He abandoned the ancient capital of Thebes and built an entirely new city just for his one god. And, in what was probably the most shocking move of all, he had workers go across Egypt and literally chisel the names of the old gods, especially Amun, right off of the monuments. He was trying to erase 1,000 years of his own country's faith.
Now, because of this dramatic break with the past, Akhenaten is often seen as this major turning point in world history. Many scholars look at his worship of a single god and say, yep, that's it. That's the very first step toward the great monotheistic faiths we know today. But what if that wasn't the full story?
To find that full story, we have to start by looking at our first major clue, Akhenaten's own family. You see, it turns out they had a very deep, very long-lasting connection to a powerful kingdom next door.
And this wasn't just a one-off thing, for some political alliance. Look at this timeline. We're talking about 3 straight generations of pharaohs marrying princesses from the exact same foreign kingdom. It starts with Akhenaten's granddad, continues with his dad, and then Akhenaten himself marries a Mitanni princess. This created what was essentially a direct pipeline for people, for culture, and for ideas to flow right into the heart of the Egyptian royal court.
So, who were these Mitanni people? Well, they were a major power in what's now northern Syria. For a while, they were rivals with Egypt, but eventually they became one of Egypt's most important allies. And as we're about to find out, the cultural identity of the Mitanni rulers is the absolute key to this whole investigation.
Okay, now we get to the really wild part. When we start looking at the language and the religion of the Mitanni, which we know about from ancient records and treaties, a very specific and pretty surprising picture starts to emerge.
Okay, this slide right here is where the evidence gets really concrete. Just take a look at this table. On the left, you've got words from a Mitanni text about horse training. In the middle, the original Sanskrit. The connection is, well, it's undeniable. Aikika, for 1, is almost identical to the Sanskrit Eka. Panza, for 5, is a dead ringer for Pancha. This is not a coincidence, folks. This is direct linguistic proof that the Mitanni elite were speaking an early form of Sanskrit.
And it goes way beyond just words. In a treaty the Mitanni made with another kingdom, their royal families swore an oath by their gods. And who were these gods? Mitra, Varuna, Indra, and the Nasataya. Every single one of them is a major deity straight out of the Rig Veda, the oldest sacred text from ancient India.
Now, the source author is really clear on this point. These clues don't just point to some general, vague Indo-Iranian culture. The evidence is more specific. For instance, the gods Indra and Nasatya are treated as demons in the early Iranian tradition, but they're revered gods in the Indian Vedic tradition. And linguistically, the Mitanni word for 7 is Sata, which has that Indian S sound, not the Iranian Hapta, where the S sound changed to an H. All the evidence points specifically to an Indian cultural origin.
So let's recap. We've got an Indian Vedic ruling class in Syria marrying into the Egyptian royal family for 3 generations, right up to our man Akhenaten. Now let's look at what you could call the smoking gun of this whole theory, an absolutely striking similarity in their most important religious texts.
First, let's look at a connection that historians have known about for a long, long time. Akhenaten's great hymn to the Aten has these incredible parallels with Psalm 104 from the Bible, even though the psalm was written centuries later.
The imagery, the structure, the similarities are just too close to ignore. For a long time, this was seen as the main story.
But what if Akhenaten's hymn wasn't the start of the chain? What if it was actually a link in the middle? That's exactly where our source material comes in, suggesting that the most revolutionary ideas in that hymn have an even older parallel, in the Vedic hymns to the sun god Surya.
The key parallel here isn't just praising the sun as a big, powerful creator god. The truly radical idea, the one you find in both of these traditions, is the concept of a universal sun god who is also a personal god, one that lives inside of you. So when Akhenaten writes, "You are in my heart," he's expressing an idea that is absolutely central to the Vedic tradition, where the sun is seen as the inner light or the soul of a person. And as the source author concludes, this conceptual leap from some distant god up in the sky to one that is right here inside of you, that's the real revolution. And when you remember that Vedic culture was present in the Mitanni court, which was directly connected to Akhenaten's court, well, a line of influence from the Rigvedic Surya doesn't just seem possible, it seems pretty probable. So, if we take all this evidence together, it really does change how we think about the ancient world. It basically redraws the map of how ideas flowed, suggesting a direct line of influence that's been almost completely overlooked by history. So let's just trace this incredible proposed journey of an idea. First, this really sophisticated concept of a personal indwelling sun god develops in Vedic India. Second, this idea travels west with the Mitanni people. Third, over decades of royal marriages, these ideas get introduced directly to the top of Egyptian society. Fourth, Akhenaten, who is a product of this mixed heritage, takes this idea and turns it into his state religion. And finally, Akhenaten's monotheism goes on to influence the later development of the biblical tradition. It's an incredible domino effect. So, you might be asking, if this connection is so strong, how do we lose track of it? Well, it's because Akhenaten's revolution ultimately failed, and failed spectacularly. After he died, the old priests of Amun came roaring back into power. They tore down his city, they chiseled his name off at the temples, and they literally struck him from the official lists of kings. He became the heretic, and his foreign ideas were basically buried with him.
Of course, history is never a simple one-way street. And the source author makes a great point here, reminding us that this was an encounter, not a monologue. Ideas almost certainly flowed in both directions, and who knows how both West Asia and India were changed by these ancient connections.
And that's really the crucial thing to take away from all of this. This story strongly suggests that the ancient world was way more interconnected than we usually give it credit for. And it leaves us with this one big, provocative question. If a connection this profound could stay hidden for more than 3,000 years, just how many other unseen threads are woven into the tapestry of our shared human history?